hard with museum staff to put this together and kind of share the direction that we're hoping to take the museum, and kind of refreshing their permanent exhibit space in the gallery below. So this is a complete redesign of the space and what they currently have. And I just ask that let's keep the questions to the end, and then we'll have kind of like an open forum Q&A session. So we'll really get into kind of the feedback and comments after the team has conducted their presentation. So we'll start off here as who are we? We're not members that you see in the DuPage community, but we are Taylor Studios, and we're located in Rantoul, Illinois, which is about 2 hours south of here, just north of Champaign. We are a design, build, fabrication firm for museum exhibits, but it's not just museums. We do aquariums, zoos, nature centers. We've done corporate headquarters, so we deal with lots of different types of clients on a daily basis. We also have exhibits in 40 of the 50 states, and we also have some exhibits internationally. So we can check that box, say that we're also an international company as well. So we're pretty proud of that, and we're excited to be here to work with you all today. For us specifically as a team, my name is Morgan Perkins. I'm the project manager. My role is I'm kind of the advocate for the client through the design phase, but I'm also with the client through fabrication as well. So I stick with the client every single day through every step of the process as a consistent voice to make sure what is wanted and desired by the client is getting told back and is realized by the team. Next, we have Katie Cow. She's our art director and graphics designer. She does all things printed, and she uses kind of her expertise in color theory to make decisions, and also provide a visual hierarchy for the content and the stories that are being told. We have visitors that like to read every single word as they come through the museum, but then we also have visitors that just like to get the high level of it. They really just want to see what's the most important part and skim right through the rest of it. So that's kind of the importance of the graphic designer role in our realm. Next we have Pete. Pete Salmon. He's our interpretive planner. He's responsible for content organization and research, and putting together the stories that the client wants to be told through the exhibit, and ensuring that they're organized and told in an efficient manner and understandable as the visitors flow into the space. And then next we have Emma Brutman. Emma is our exhibit designer. She chooses the physical media and organizes it to be able to tell the interpretive story that Pete has put together. So any of the physical aspects that are within the space itself. So what are our goals today? Our goals today is to share a little bit with you all how we got to this point, what kind of decision tools we use to make to assist our design process, as well as some of the discussions and conversations and direction we have put together with the museum staff. But then also to gather community feedback on your thoughts of that process and where we currently stand, so that we can take the next step forward and ensure that this is a community project and that everyone has a voice in this. What voices are missing? Are there certain communities that we might be missing? We're also being tasked to make sure that this is diverse and is inclusive for all types of people and abilities. But then this also gives us a relationship an ability to build a relationship with the community, because you as the community are going to be the visitors for the space. So we want to kind of get the voices of people that will be intaking the new space as it's designed. Okay, so I'm going to hand it off to Pete, and we'll cover what is schematic design.
The books that you have in your hands.
Can't hear you.
Sorry.
Oh.
The books that you have in your hand are schematic design books. Still too quiet?
No, that works.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. is it's the initial phase of design. It is when we start putting together an outline, a content outline, and that content outline is bounced off of our clients to make sure that what we are saying is exactly what they're looking for. The second phase is that it is also going to include some physical drawings. And those physical drawings are draft drawings, they're black and white drawings, because we don't want to get too far ahead before we get approval from the client as well as the stakeholders. Number three, we do it so that we can budget it. We have the ability to budget the schematic design illustrations that you see so that we know that we're always on track. We're never going to deliver you something that is not within budget. And we budget 3 or 4 times during the design phase to make sure that happens. The important part of this illustration is to show you where we are in the design process. If you look at it, we're not yet 20% done. So that kind of gives you a feeling of where we're sitting at right now. We don't want to get too far ahead for the very reasons that I have mentioned. And that is why the stakeholders are here to give us comments, because the earlier comments we receive, the better we know if we're on track or not. It's a lot easier to turn around and do something differently when you're only 20% done versus 80% done. So you'll see there that schematic design is boxed, and it's about 20% of the design process. So we are happy that you're here, and we're happy that you're here early, the first 20%. I'd also like to point out resource analysis. Resource analysis is not a formal design stage, but what it is it's a content research stage. And we meet with the client, we meet with the museum staff, we find out their ideas, and then we go and we start researching. We put together a story based on the research and based on the desires of the client. And so that is also what you see, this is also taking place. The important part of schematic, the important part of resource analysis is there may be experts out here, and you all may say, I haven't been asked about anything. And I know geology more than anyone else in this county. Why have I not been talked to? Well, resource analysis is not done until the exhibit design is done. So after this first stage, once things get okay, that's when I reach out to the experts. And that's when we start putting together the next beginning phase. So what we're asking for as you review, as you listen today, as you review your books, please consider some of the following, because these are the comments that will be most helpful to us when we receive your feedback. What is your overall impression of the exhibit design? Does the layout feel easy to navigate? How well does the exhibit balance educational content with engaging interactive exhibits? How accessible do you feel the exhibit is to people of all ages and abilities? What specific aspect of the exhibit design do you like the most? What do you like the worst? What changes or improvements? This is the important one, I think, personally. What changes or improvements would you suggest to the exhibit design? So you are free to look at what you think is positive, what you think is negative, and then put in your own ideas of how you believe you can improve this design. Those will be taken very seriously. And are there any specific historical events or figures you feel should be represented in the exhibit? Everybody has an idea of who's important. We want to hear them all. We want to hear them all. So those are some of the things that you can think about as we continue on. So how do we start the process? How do we start the process of exhibit design? We start it with a central theme. Before we do any exhibit, we prioritize story. Because story is what pulls people in. I could give you all the facts in the world about DuPage County, but if I link it to a story, all of a sudden people are going to remember. And that is what we are trying to do. We don't want people walking out and saying, I don't remember what the population was in 1970. But I do want them to be able to go home and say, oh my gosh, Mom, there's this thing called the Midnight Rain. Okay? So that is what we're after. So a central theme is the guiding principle for all content in a design. It tells us what to put in the design, and better yet, tells us what not to put in the design. So by that standard, it's an objective almost. It's like a, when you're doing your paper, and you have to come up with that, what's it called?
Thesis?
Yes, your thesis statement. Essentially, a central theme is an exhibit's thesis statement. Okay? Every single exhibit that's worth its salt, I think, follows this pattern. It doesn't necessarily look like this pattern. I'm not saying that that's the layout of an exhibit. But what we have here is a central theme. And that central theme is the overarching idea, once again, of what this exhibit is trying to say, what this exhibit is trying to provoke inside of you. How is it going to touch your heart, and how is it going to touch your mind? That's the purpose of a central theme. But we can't stop there. We have to break the central theme into its constituent parts so that it is digestible for the audience. You cannot have these gigantic, just one central theme and everything just kind of blends together. We break it up into sub-themes. Think of sub-themes as separate exhibits. Each one of these separate exhibits is going to reinforce the central theme, but make it more palatable for the visitor. And then you have your storylines. If you look over here, right here, this could be a storyline right here. So the storyline is the detailed version of one of the exhibits. A central theme also works, a central theme also works as an advanced organizer. Anybody in education knows what an advanced organizer is. Think of it this way. If you go to a movie, you're 15 minutes late, you have no idea what that movie's about, you don't even know the name of it, but you just pay because you're a little sad and lonely. So you sit in that theater, you're 15 minutes late, and you're like, what's going on here? And you're trying to make sense without any previous understanding of what the movie can possibly be about. Now take another person that's 15 minutes late, but they were told prior what the movie's about. Who do you think has the easier time trying to figure out the movie? The person that had some knowledge of what they were about to experience. And so as a central theme, that would be front and center of the exhibit as you walk in, so that a person has already established this is what they're trying to put forward. Sorry, once again. The central theme of this exhibit history is ordinary people. Why that? One of the reasons that we decided that this would be a good one is that we always think of history as the super high achievers, the people that have done great, great things. But we don't want to exclude them, but we want to include the everyday 9-to-5 people that work their tail off and has made DuPage what it is. Because it's not just about the high achievers. It's about the everyday people that care about this land and will do something about it. And that is one of the reasons we want a well-rounded, inclusive understanding of history is more than just the super people, okay? And so, if that's the central theme, as you see, the sub-themes are the ones that break it down into its constituent parts, into chewable form, so that a visitor has an easier way of understanding what they're trying to, what the exhibit's trying to accomplish. So sub-theme 1 is going to support central theme. Sub-theme 8 is going to support the central theme. So I'll read these, and they're in your book. Sub-theme 1 is a central map. We'll get more to that, what it looks like, what it does. But that central map is going to emphasize that hardworking everyday citizens are instrumental in addressing the continual growth and of DuPage County. Sub-theme 2 is going to talk about the natural resources. The natural resources of DuPage set the stage for the people that have come to the county for many, many reasons over time. Sub-theme 3, infrastructure and transportation. I think about the whole Naperville versus Wheaton and who's going to get the train, okay? But there's other things besides the trains and infrastructure and transportation. You have your water reclamation. Sub-theme 4, people arriving and people passing through. This is to remind people that it's not just here today. We could go back as far as, I was reading the other day that they found paleo points in the county, which is fantastic. So people have been coming here. They're either passing through or they're staying. And so we're going to investigate some of those. And then government and midnight raid. DuPage has a specific type of government. Let's see if I wrote it down because I have. You have a township government. Township government is the oldest American form of government that has been consistent, meaning there's been no break. And that is a real fascinating thing, but how many people can tell you what a township government is and why it's good and why it helps ordinary people? Business and leadership, pretty self-explanatory. You have a very inviting county. Something for military. The pride that is taken in the United States and in DuPage has always transformed itself to the ability of people willing to go to war for their county and for their country. DuPage County has always emphasized education. From the moment East Coasters came in, they came in with an understanding that education is priority number 1 besides religion for these young children. Long before there was structural government, there was education. As soon as people got here, they put up their building and they started a school. And it is reflected today in the amount of schools that you have in your county. Never left, never left. And then the last, science and innovation. Why are you able to attract all of these people to DuPage County? Why do you have such a vital science and innovation hub here in the county? So, to repeat, central theme, everything's going to revolve around the central theme. Each one of these sub-themes is going to point right directly back to history is ordinary people. I should probably turn this the proper way. Thank you.
All right, hi everyone. I'm Emma. I'm the exhibit designer on this project, and we're going to look at some of the visuals that go with all the stuff that Pete has talked about. So the first thing we're going to look at is a floor plan that talks about how the content is laid out. This is a top-down view of the space. As a reminder, it's the gallery directly below us as you enter the doors to the left. So this is a top-down view. Visitors enter right here from the bottom left of your screen. And from there, they're free to explore the gallery. What you're looking at here, each bubble coordinates to one of the sub-themes that Pete talked through, but the relative sizes of the bubbles are really just to lay out space. That doesn't mean that one thing is going to have a huge amount more content than the other. It's just kind of the order that we've arranged them in. The other thing to point out is this is what we call a spoke and hub layout for an exhibit design. The central map that Pete began to mention is the hub, and if this is a wheel, then all of the sub-themes are spokes that circle from it. So that kind of is how we're considering visitor flow. As visitors come in, they are greeted by an introduction wall. It is a faux stained glass entry wall with an introduction to the exhibit and a donor panel, and we're going to look at that in more detail as we move on. But from there, visitors are truly free to explore at their own pace and interest. The central map can be a fantastic jumping off point for exploration in this exhibit, but ultimately, any way that a visitor chooses to engage is still going to give them a complete story. So I'm going to talk through kind of some of the main elements here before showing you the visuals so you know what to expect. The central map that Pete mentioned is kind of the main big wow of this exhibit. It is a tech-forward interactive that takes the history of DuPage and puts it on the visual of a map. As visitors come to it, they'd be greeted by a map that is a blank basic layout, and they'd be able to choose any of these topics and see how they populate the county and the space. For example, if somebody was interested in infrastructure and transportation, they could interact with the touchscreen, pick that content area, and then watch the map populate with the earliest Native American paths, to then plank roads, to then railroads, to today's highway system. So any of these topics would be able to be interactable in that way, and then visitor would have a jumping off point for going to the content area that coordinates with it to get more information on that topic. So it serves as kind of a primer and a return point. This map will also have a docent mode because we know there's a lot of docent-led tours at this museum, and we really want the docents to be able to tell the story that they're excited about. So as they start the tour, the map would be able to go into a mode to help guide their storytelling. We've left lots of space for large tour groups to be able to circle around, and we've also really thought about visibility. So when there's a school group coming through, the teacher or instructor can see everybody in the space all at once. And then the last thing I'm going to introduce before showing you an actual picture is the life-size illustrated people that are going to serve as kind of the guides of this exhibit. Like Pete said, history is ordinary people, and while we're not necessarily plastering that on a wall, it is the guiding principle that has led our design. So each of these content areas will be introduced by a person, whether a real historical person or someone that's kind of an amalgam of a type of person, and they are going to be the entry point into that piece of history. So looking at this image, you, the visitor, are standing at the main entrance and looking into the space. I'm going to go to the next page. So in your book, that's page 6 and 7. So I can kind of talk through what some of these arrows are pointing at. So the first thing you'll see as you enter the space is this faux stained glass wall. When we first got here, we heard many times that this building is the biggest and best artifact that the museum has, and we were incredibly inspired by every element of this building. So we've got the beautiful stained glass behind us that we wanted to bring into the space downstairs, and we really wanted this gallery to be brought back to its true original 1891 glory. So we were inspired by the stained glass. We want to restore the floor, and we want to put the walls and the crown molding and the ceiling into period-appropriate colors that make this room feel like it might have done originally. The stained glass was also something, the faux stained glass is something we're also really inspired by because we feel like we can tell and introduce the story of ordinary people building history with this kind of entry point. It insulates the gallery and makes everything behind it feel like a cocooned, immersive experience. And it itself is inspired by Works Progress Administration Bureaus, of which there are many in this county, and they really showcase collaboration, hard work, and citizens building a history together. That really helps us tie into history's ordinary people and tell the incredibly diverse stories of the citizens of DuPage County and all they've brought to it. This entryway also has an introduction panel that will talk through the content that is about to be explored, and we'll have a front and center donor panel to thank the people that made this possible. So as you move into the space, you'll notice a lot of furniture. This is part of our concept of restoring this building to its original glory. So each of the exhibit content areas will have some kind of furniture piece, whether a real antique late Victorian piece or something that's recreated to feel in that period. Each of these pieces holds either artifact cases or interactives or graphics, but we want everything that appears touchable to be touchable, and we want people to be able to engage very personally and in a tactile way with history. We want people to feel immersed when they walk in. So for example, this antique architect's desk would have an artifact case built into it to showcase artifacts related to history and transportation, but it itself is a piece of history. You'll also see our life-size illustrated cutouts. You can see a couple of them here. And like I said, some of them will be real people, and some of them will be a type of person, but they will each have an introduction graphic that they are holding to introduce who they are and why they are the gateway to this content area. And then some of the objects you see here, like we are at an early stage, so we haven't curated every object and every piece that's in here, so these are an idea of how it might stack together. In this view, you are standing, if you've entered the gallery, you're standing at the wall that's directly to your right and ahead. So you're looking in. So the biggest thing to talk through in this view is the central map. So I do want to kind of point out a few of its features here. So it is a very large touchscreen that is embedded into a Victorian piece of furniture. In this case, a library table or desk. We really want to blend the modern and the antique, and we really want history to feel like a live thing, but for the exhibit itself to be something contemporary and adaptable and updatable as technology grows. In this view, you can see a lot of the content areas that the map will be able to cover. So over here, there is a farming and milling content area, and that can be shown on the map. So if that was somebody's area of interest, they could populate the map with all of the historic and modern farms and mills that have moved through this county and built up its kind of economic base. Then we talked about the infrastructure area, so someone would be able to populate the map with railroads, plank roads, all of that. And then over here, actually I'm gonna go to this image. This content area talks about all of the many people that have passed through or lived here, and all of the things, all of the impact they've made. So somebody could perhaps populate the map with every Native American village or every French fur trading post and see how those different people and their communities and their spaces have built up the county into what it is today. There's also many life-size illustrations you can see here. So we've got kind of settler farmers and millers. We've got a modern-day water commissioner, an 1849 railway worker, and we've got modern immigrants, historic farmers, folks coming to freedom via the Underground Railroad, and Native American individuals, whether currently living here or people whose ancestors made a home here. So we want these people to guide the stories, especially in this content area, which features another interactive that we're really excited about, which is the Oral Histories Interactive. We would use the resource of people to tell stories here. So this interactive would feature a life-size screen embedded into historic casework, that would tell the stories of people who've made an impact on DuPage's history. So for example, we might have somebody talk about why their family chose to immigrate here, whether way back in the 1830s or 20 years ago. We might have someone who's a content expert talk about, for example, why the Underground Railroad was such an important part of this county's history. We might have someone tell stories of their ancestors who settled here long before European settlement. But we really want people to tell stories here and for visitors to feel connected to history by seeing people like them talk about what makes this county unique and special. Then one of the other things I want to point out in this view are the scenic elements that guide visitors interpretively and visually through the space. So you'll see a mill wheel here and some railroad cutouts here. These elements are not just aesthetics or visuals, they are also a key part of the content. The same way that we picked people to guide stories, we wanted to pick objects or ideas to guide stories as well. So since we have 9 content areas, we want visual through lines and ties between those. And we will have graphic elements to explain, for example, why we chose a mill wheel or why we chose a railroad. And that's gonna help tell the stories of the content area that it represents while guiding your eye through the space and kind of helping you navigate. But with that, I wanna hand this over to Katie to talk through graphics, and thank you very much.
Bear with me, I'm a little bit of a soft-spoken talker, so I'll do my best. So, as really quick on this slide and on page 18 of your books, you'll see the fonts and colors that we're using in this exhibit. I do want to note that the projector sort of washes out the colors, especially on the next slide as well, so please refer to the books in terms of the accuracy of the colors. That is much closer. And on this slide, you can kind of see all of those different elements together in a layout or in context. And so this isn't a specific layout, but any of the text and images are placeholder. But this should give you an overview of the hierarchy of the different types of panels that might appear in the exhibit and the scale to each other. Each vignette within the exhibit, so each of those exhibit areas will have kind of a statement at the top, coinciding with the sub-theme of the area, and such as kind of like for this one, infrastructure and transportation that ties into the sub-theme, while each of those cutout figures will be accompanied by a yellow panel to introduce them. The placement of these 2 elements allow viewers to first engage with the argument themes before kind of diving into detailed historical facts. The header adds a historical tone that ties well with the exhibit's theme, reinforcing the weight of the content while remaining readable. And the boldness and size of the main header also anchors the vignettes. The typography of the subheaders and the body text from the other panels ensures readability and creates a smooth flow of information, making it easier for viewers to distinguish between key messages and kind of supporting details. The soft blues and grays serve as the background colors, evoking a sense of calm and nostalgia, which complements the original wood architecture of the building. It reflects the past while maintaining a fresh, clean look that's approachable for modern audiences. We'll be using the yellow in not only the introductory panels, but as interactive prompts to provide contrast against those blues and grays. And so this will draw attention to these key elements and areas of interaction. The separation of content into distinct text and image panels allow us the ability to create clean and organized layouts that guide the viewer through narrative and logical progression. So each block is self-contained, allowing visitors to absorb one piece of information at a time without being overwhelmed by the sheer amount of history. The graphics will seamlessly blend into the historical settings, such as in display near artifacts or within these reconstructed environments, immersing viewers into the scenes, and then visitors will be able to engage more deeply in these graphics that provide context to these artifacts, linking that written content directly to the physical elements of DuPage County's history. And with that, I'll hand this on to Morgan.
Okay, so now what we'd like to do is take some time to hear from you all. So this gives us the opportunity to hear some of the community feedback and just Just for further context too, we asked you all to sign in as you came in today and provide some email that in case you guys have a great piece of history that we would like to include in the exhibit, we can reach out and get further context or information to help specifically Pete or the team with some of that research that they may have to conduct as the design continues forward. So yeah, I guess I'd like to take the time to hear kind of some of your thoughts on the direction, and if you have any questions that we can kind of help clarify some things for you all. Yes, sir.
Is there any way to include as they are leaving, asking for their feedback? You know, which part of the exhibit or something do they feel most attached to? Or something like I see more on it? We're gonna have people coming through here, we're not gonna stand there and talk to them.
Right.
But I'd love to know what they're thinking as they're leaving.
Yeah.
And then something maybe to give to the children about, what's your story gonna be?
Yeah.
This sort of about the kids taking forward.
The wonderful thing about that is its simplicity, its inexpensiveness, and the amount of time that I ignore all exhibits just to read that board. I remember one of my favorite comments, I did a exhibit in Arkansas, and it had a diary entry about a woman making pie as this war was going on. And the soldiers could smell the pie, because they were about, 100 yards from each other. And that was the story to show you that they are fighting on their doorstep in Arkansas. And what do you think about the exhibit? Or something was asked, and it was just a sticky board, and a young man put, "Pie is my favorite dessert." Now what that did was that cracked me up, that he took the time, but then he read the label. There was proof that he read the label. And so I spend a lot of time reading those, even if it's just stickies. I find them fascinating. So duly noted, duly noted. I think it's always an outstanding idea. I can't think of a time when I wouldn't use it.
So we can give ideas?
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
So we're in the land of Lincoln. I would try to connect Lincoln with us. And the way to connect Lincoln with us is Joe Naper made a deal with Lincoln to make Vandalia, move Vandalia's capital from Illinois from Vandalia to Springfield. And Joe Naper had to agree to vote that way, and then Joe Naper told Lincoln, but you have to cut off DuPage, the section is going to be DuPage off of Cook County. So Lincoln, so that was the start of DuPage itself. So that would be interesting to have Lincoln connected to it somehow. The other thing is I love the wood, I love bringing stuff back to the building, like you said. I love all of your interactive ideas. One interactive idea that can also be related to fundraising is have a VR ability for businesses to highlight their business and their history of their business, and it costs money for them to do that, and just so it's not, so you can always update it whenever they want to, but there's a cost to that, and it would just be, the VR, so it wouldn't be a stated exhibit by itself, but that might be a way to promote raising money for this exhibit by getting businesses to do that.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah.
We have a section in the outline about breaking apart Cook County, which I also find fascinating, and I also find it something that defines DuPage. They realize, I'm from Cook County, you don't want to be anywhere near me, I understand that. And so you want to get out. Why do they want to get out? Why do they want to be different? And so that is an element, but we had not gone as far as Lincoln, so we will note that.
It's the long nine is what they will call it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
There's a lot of information to take in, but in terms of where you're at now, in terms of concept, the spoke design is the best concept, I believe, for the amount of patrons that come through this museum on a daily basis, and also the actual interaction that they have with us. If you had like a maze flow with the big panels and like one direct start to finish, it would have been a mess.
Yes.
But this boutique style layout where you can go back and forth, and you could actually like have the parents at the table, the child over there, child comes back, parents come in, group of kids go back and forth, couples, and being able to have people not jump around the maze, but actually say someone's there, I'll go here, and kind of have that zigzagging effect is a good fit for it.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's kind of based off of the free learning standard, where you go where you want, where you're interested as a child, and I'm gonna go where I am interested. And there's something empowering about being able to go where you wanna go and look at what you wanna look without following some kind of trail.
Because, yeah, the biggest problem I've had in specifically history museums, when they did a maze format and a bottleneck,
Yes.
now I have to, I'm going from like centuries, or hundreds, and then coming back.
Yes.
So it's, I'm walking through this design, and I get to this point, but there's a family there, so I skip over, and I'm learning about this as you're coming back.
Right.
And you're always having to do this as opposed to something like this. If I come in on a Saturday and I just wanna look at just that part, I could go from table to that part.
Yes.
And I think there's a lot of patrons in a township like this that are repeated people.
Yes.
And so in that format, you could spend, a little bit of time here, go downstairs, and then come back up, spend a little more time and leave.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Are you planning on having any smaller exhibits up in this room or maybe around the edge?
Yes.
Yeah,
We have an authority figure.
I can take that question. So we do exhibits up here. It wouldn't be necessarily related to the permanent exhibit. It would take topics that maybe aren't as fully represented in the permanent exhibit, but we have one that we tend to do the stage, and then sometimes we do around the edges as well. It just kind of depends on what we have going on. This room is also a space that we utilize for rentals and different events. So it kind of depends on what's going on that week or that year. But we do them up here.
We also have 3 other exhibit spaces that change out, that Emily changes out every year. So there's also 3 other temporary exhibits that are changed and waiting for us to go in depth.
Yeah.
Something in the permanent exhibit that we couldn't go in depth in that space, but we can go in depth in a whole exhibit about it.
Yes.
One of the, I think, unseen and normally unrecognized forces in DuPage County for good are all of the not-for-profits and the service organizations. And I'd like somewhere to make some reference to them, because their contribution shouldn't be missed, even though, again, a lot of it's small groups in local areas, but throughout the county,
Yes.
their impact is tremendous.
Yes.
And I'd like to see them recognized also to encourage people to be involved.
Absolutely. That's an excellent idea, which fits straight into that theme.
Yeah, it's ordinary people.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
that's great. Yes.
So a couple other things. Another Lincoln connection is Robert Todd Lincoln helped found the Chicago Golf Club, and Chicago Golf started in Wheaton is a book that this organization has promoted, and you probably have seen that. But related to those things are the major, like Morton Salt, Port Arboretum, all these, the Corporate Foundation and Canteen. I'm assuming that you're going to try to incorporate all of those big things into this somehow?
Well, it depends. Now, we have, what we're trying to do is put together an outline with priorities. And one of the hard things about schematic design, the design that we are currently in right now, is that we have to make hard choices. So we have to balance content importance with the space that it's going to consume, as well as the budget. And so there's always going to be an important story or two in the main gallery at least, which could go into one of the other 3 galleries, not galleries, but the other 3 temporary galleries. So it becomes a thing of choice, and we have to determine that, not we, but the folks that have hired us.
Also, to go in further, some of those examples are on the more in detail outline, we'll note them down here as well. But Morton Arboretum could fit under the natural resources, along with the Conservation Foundation, all of the forests and park districts, because we're very rich in green space here. And that's a unique part of DuPage County. And then, what other business did you mention? Cantini. Oh, Cantini would also fit in green space, and that's actually how it's classified in our current exhibit. So potentially those, we're hoping to touch on as many of those as we can in the space given. But those two for sure are noted in the more in-depth outline that we are, I don't know how many pages it is now, but we just keep passing information back and forth.
Okay.
Is every museum in DuPage, like the person that runs the Albers Museum, are they all, we just read them? Did she give you ideas to, like, from Neighbor Settlement?
So we invited, Neighbor Settlement was here last night,
Oh,
along with Bensonville Fisher Farm,
okay.
and the Greg House from Westmont. I think there's one other museum I'm missing, but so they were all invited, and they'll all be on the survey list. They'll get the survey in multiple ways. In fact, we can even post it on our regional museum page. So we can definitely do that. We're trying to get their opinion, and then as we write about their topics of expertise, we will be reaching out to them to get the best sources, make sure that we're accurate, have them edit the label. It is a collaboration that, collaborative project, and our staff has contacts with a lot of those museums. It may not be the ones that you mentioned, like Neighbor Settlement with Jean Schulte last night, and so we'll be reaching out to those contacts to make sure that we have the story correct as far as their expertise. And by the way, we do that for all of our exhibits, and we're constantly exchanging ideas and loaning items to there, and we loan items for our temporary exhibits. We would not loan an item for the permanent exhibit, because we wouldn't want to keep it for potentially 20 years.
Well, like for the issue of the Underground Railroad, obviously Glenn Turner has the knowledge in all those places.
So we didn't mention her, but she's also listed under the oral history. So under the oral history panel interactive that we had that kind of looks like a mirror, that is going to have feature different videos of both experts like Lynette Tilly-Turner talking about her expertise, but also people talking about their own experience. Bob Jacobson, we do have him recorded as well. And we're hoping, and it, obviously that technology, since we haven't paid for it yet, doesn't exist as an actual piece in physical space yet. But we are hoping that it can be uploaded with more and more as we collect more, or exchanged out for different times of year or different themes that we might want to focus on a little more. We didn't touch on the artifact cases, but I'm just going to touch on that now. The artifact cases will be easy to get into, and we can exchange out some of the artifacts easier than our current exhibit, because our current exhibit is so hard to get into. Those pieces have been in the light and in the environment for over 30 years, and so we need to, get them put away and take better care of them, and get some maybe conservation on some of them, because some of them are a little damaged. But we'll be able to exchange out the future exhibit pieces, so we never get in that situation again.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. I'm sorry I forgot to talk about that. There's always something else. You can see artifact cases right here, 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 and here. So some of them will be kind of standard issue cases that fit the aesthetic of the space, and like Michelle said, are easy to change out and can be cycled whenever the staff want to. Some of them will be integrated into furniture objects, so they'll feel more like part of the space and hold more permanent collection items. But you can see at least one per content area, often more, and in varying sizes. Thank you, Michelle, for bringing that up.
It'll also be easier to clean items, because that's also a thing that we need to access them to clean them.
Yeah.
Just to look at some of the interactive devices you have, so just based on what you have, it's the central table is interactive,
Yes.
and then the actual oral history is interactive.
Yes.
the desk and back, that's just more or less, display, there's nothing interactive on the desk, correct?
It's tactile. Well, it's interactive in the sense that it's tactile, but we are still thinking through some ideas that can be integrated more into the items as well.
Understood, in terms, cause everything you're saying now is more or less junior high to adult level information. So there's nothing in consideration for kids, is that more or less, there's nothing that represents for a kid to be able to interact.
There were drawers that we talked about.
That's still in process. But yeah, I can speak to that. So, the audience we most focused on here was kind of intergenerational families, where older people are kind of helping guide and narrate for the younger people in their lives. So our biggest thought was if the interactives are geared towards kind of the families, then they can be the facilitators for helping their kids and their younger folks understand what the goal is, what the purpose is, and what the interaction is.
Understood, yeah, because I could see how parents and grandparents spend a lot of time in that side of the room, while their kids need something to do.
Sure.
Or something that be involved, something that kind of had a feel of history that was to their level, and that gives a good balance, being able to have a parent being able to see the screen, have one eye on the child or grandparent, and, you know, adults be able to be at that screen and look this way, or vice versa, so that there's, you know, connection points.
Yes.
Yeah, and we can also definitely think through some kind of younger geared interactives as well, so thank you for that.
Yes, I guess on that point, I have a few questions on the interactive. So since the digital map appears to be on the top, is that going to be wheelchair accessible? And then also, is there gonna be some sort of like step stool or something for younger kids who may not be able to reach something like that?
Yeah, so everything you see here is designed with ADA best practices. So everything you see is wheelchair accessible, is within wheelchair reach, and is accessible to people who are shorter stature or that kind of thing. If we really want like tinies to be able to get up to certain things, we can certainly look at providing steps. But that interactive itself is a little lower than table height. So based on just like kids' sizes, if you're in the 5 to 6 range, you have pretty full access. So thank you for that.
And there isn't always an ADA review by our chief executive officer.
My other question on the interactives was, obviously we all know technology evolves so quickly, is how often does the electrical technological component of those have to be replaced? Or is it dependent?
Yeah, so the subcontractors we work with tend to leave themselves a backdoor into tech so that they are able to update as needed. We never leave a client hanging, like your tech isn't gonna go obsolete because we are gonna have a way to keep it maintenance.
Got it.
But not forever.
Yeah, if only.
Yeah, I just want to make sure.
Well, no.
I know you mentioned that it's further in the scheme of things, but you haven't really figured out colors yet. Is that wall, do you envision that the actual main walls being light, or do you envision it being dark? Is the room are you gonna walk in, are you gonna feel like how this room is? Do you envision it being a bright room, or more or less Victorian, like darker flow?
So colors are definitely something we're still gonna look at in greater detail. We are looking at brightening the space overall, but that's maybe all we can give at the moment.
Understood.
Yeah.
More lights will also be added. So there'll be brighter lights.
Any other comments or feedback you guys have today?
We can do it now.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's nice.
Oh, yes.
I'm sorry, I'll give my last little thought.
No, you're fine.
So if we're doing like ordinary people, then is there gonna be a little bit more emphasis in any of the, like the families that like lived and worked in the county? Because you have so many businesses that were established back then, that like have, you know, some of them still exist to today, but you have like even just the basics of like, if you ran the grocery store, you were like living in town, and then, you know,
think a nice way to think about this is, oh, I'm sorry. Never told them out loud enough, sorry. You take some of the largest companies here, instead of focusing necessarily on the CEO, we're going to focus on somebody that is out in the field doing some of the work, okay? That doesn't mean we need to avoid the CEO, but it won't solely be the CEO. It will be the people that are out in the field, getting dirty, doing these things, and doing discoveries, great discoveries for whoever they are working for, whether, you know. So here's an example of maybe some smaller businesses that I was asked to look into. So the Sublet family, the Silk Up Hardware, the Thai Beanie Babies, Market Day, the Will Group, and what we were going to do is a manufacturing businesswoman in one of those organizations, an African American entrepreneur, maybe on the small side, maybe on the large side. So what we're trying to do is not necessarily malign anybody, but to bring in, it takes a village type of thing.
Yes, sir.
Also, how about something like a medical scale manufacturer, for some of those kind of things?
What? Medical images?
Medical scale, factory array patients and surgical things that
Sure.
that were developed here in DuPage County, you know?
Thank you.
I can talk to you about some of those.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. It's a great idea.
That also feels like.
Maybe have some examples of some of the early products and so forth.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, that would also fit well with science and innovation. That's one of those really
Right.
interesting. That would fit well with the science and innovation category as
Yeah,
well.
that's what I'm talking about.
Cross,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Like the transition from mechanical scales to electronic scales.
Yes.
And that kind of stuff.
Yes.
I can help you on that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Will you have more modern day people, like the blue shoes are from Wheaton? I mean, I don't know, is that too contemporary?
I know we have talked about some concerns about having still living people included, because you never know like where their stories are going to end up, and if that's something that, you know, the museum would still align with. So we are focusing a little bit more on people that have passed. However, nothing's off the table. We are trying to find a balance of trying to make this as modern, but also still tell those historical stories as well. So that's kind of the balance that we're trying to find.
Well, you know, the mayor of Wheaton used to scary. He was there 3 times, and they found Gary, and he had his name after him because he created U.S. Steel. And, so there's so many people around the county that
Yes.
it exists.
Yes.
And that's
You have a huge job. I mean, I can't imagine.
That's really one of the draws, especially for the people arriving and people passing through Interactive and telling their own stories, that it gives the museum the opportunity to kind of keep adding and bringing and furthering that content a little bit more. So that's kind of one of the sections we're really looking at, exploring and continuously building.
Yeah, I don't think there's a hard and fast rule as to, oh no, that person's alive, can't do that. You know, Gwinnett Turner would be the perfect example. If she engages in the interactive and speaks to people. And so there's no hard and fast on whether they're alive or dead.
But yeah, there's a variety of famous people that are actors that are from.
Correct. Correct. Thank you.
That guy from Will and Grace, you heard his name. What's his name?
Sean.
Yeah, Sean Hayes is hilarious. He went to Illinois State too.
Is that the shorter guy or the taller?
Shorter guy.
Okay.
Yeah, he's,
The funnier guy.
He is hilarious.
Yes, yes.
But I love the colleges too, like Wheaton College and North Central and Bennington. That's a really good point. Glad that you're highlighting all the different universities.
Well, I was struck by there's a direct line. I mean, as soon as some of these New England folk came in and said, land is cheap, let's move here, let's get more freedom, etc. And then, boom, schools, and then it just took off. And it seems to have been continuous, so.
The other thing is out in Wayne, is just a little part of DuPage, but they are to open the Dunham Woods Riding Club has special horses that the owner of that whole area brought in just to, basically it's like it's like the modern day car dealership.
Sure.
They would raise these horses there that were the typical horses for people in Chicago to come and get. So that was a big deal.
Right.
But that's kind of on the periphery of the county, but it's still in DuPage. So Wayne is that might be interesting.
That is of interest, thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm just gonna suggest maybe right outside the door of this, and maybe it's up to we have to do. There should be a poster of Mr. DuPage welcoming you, so we know where the name came from, who he was.
Yes.
It's just a thought.
I think if you could have some sort of video or hologram of Marty as the chairman of the foundation welcoming everybody.
I like that.
I'd like to be 5'10".
Be whatever you want.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And you may not answer this now, but what are some of the things you don't like about the current exhibit? Because you get a chance to walk through the current exhibit.
Right.
And then you're putting a plan out for this new forward thinking.
Yes.
What are some of the things you don't like about, what you like and don't like about it's currently here?
Oh, that's currently.
Yeah.
Ooh. Wow.
We wanted to open up the space more. That's one of our most immediate things, is right now we heard from the staff that they have trouble seeing into the whole space.
Yes.
And large groups have trouble
Yes.
using the space. So, I mean, we don't like saying we don't like stuff, but we wanted absolutely to open it.
We don't mind saying we don't like stuff.
Okay, we don't want to say that about your space.
Yeah, that's why I looked over when you're like, what don't you like? And I'm like, we gotta get finished first.
I mean, we touched on a lot of it already, so some of it, I'll stand up here so people can see and not screen your head. So for one, we mentioned getting in the cases is basically impossible unless you have a team of people. I am not a team of people. So getting in, cleaning, taking care of the artifacts, that's a huge thing for us. They mentioned opening the space when we're doing tours, having that wall in there is basically impossible to be able to view everyone and actually be able to speak to them, especially when we have a larger group. Updating information to be more accurate and representative of DuPage County as a whole, since it was in the 80s that this was, completed. Things have changed. We have more information, more knowledge. None of that is very adaptable at this moment. There's not a ton of interactives that are currently viable for people to actually utilize right now. So there's a lot. It's just an outdated exhibit. Exhibit shouldn't really last as long as this one has, and so it's just due for a refresh and an update and more accessibility for us as staff and for as patrons who are visiting.
And I think when I walked in, there were so many things, and that doesn't mean that they're not all interesting. But what I was unable to find out is what's most important, because there wasn't, to me at least, but I've only been down there 3 times. There wasn't, to me at least, a hierarchy where you walk in and you say, boom, okay, that is what they're gonna highlight. And now that they highlighted it, here are the little tangential stories around that. And so I'm really big into emphasizing something and then having supporting content. Emphasize supporting content. So I know in my head what everyone here values the most. And that's kind of that central theme, sub-theme story.
Understood.
It's also very purple.
Yes, that's why I brought the color.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, you had a question.
What's gonna happen with the existing model train exhibit?
As far as I know, nothing, but I am
The train exhibit is staying.
Yes.
It's going to continue to stay, nothing's happening to the train exhibit.
We went down there and we were blown away.
We were, it's so good.
I keep going back.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. We stayed, we brought in tents and we stayed a week.
The Elmer's Museum had a cool exhibit with DuPage County, before settlers, I think 10,000 years ago or something. It shows how Lake Michigan came up to the edge of Elmer's.
Yes.
So that might be interesting to see, some interactive, I don't know if it's cartoons, whatever you make, but something that.
Illustrations.
Illustrations of those things. And I found like Arid Lake is a glacier lake.
Yes.
Those kind of things are pretty interesting if you're adding illustrations.
Yes, absolutely. I think that goes into the natural resources
Yes.
sub-theme, where when you think about what the gift of the glaciers, if there were no glaciers, you would not have this farmland, because the glaciers brought about the prairie. You wouldn't have it flat, you wouldn't have these rivers, you wouldn't have these kettle holes, and you wouldn't have these moraines.
Well, in Glen Ellen, I think it's called a cave, isn't it?
Yeah, there's caves too,
So
absolutely.
those are obviously interesting as well.
They're all interesting.
The cane, it's a deposit left over by the glaciers, and it's really hidden within the forests of Glen Ellen, and it blows your mind how you can walk up to like 50 feet in the air.
Absolutely.
It's a very big cave.
And without the glaciers, you wouldn't have the gravel and the mineral deposits that you have, that they brought down from Canada, scraping it all down and just laying it right there in the page.
It's all good.
I'm not sure how far you got in your research on transportation, but I know for a lot of the residents, the highway system is a big help.
That's gonna be part of the map, hopefully. That's gonna be part of the map, but it's also going to be, we're gonna feature the people that worked on that. The immigrants that came in, and we'll even tell the story, if we're allowed to, between Wheaton and Naperville and the Plank Road. We're fine with the Plank Road as they hear choo-choo and all the wheat going to Chicago.
Will there be a section about veterans?
Yes, yes, there is.
The first shot at Gettysburg was a guy from Wheaton.
Wow.
This house over here.
I did not hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, we've got a whole military section where we want to showcase those stories and also be able to cycle through some of the uniforms in the collection here to be able to see them a little more.
And these flags are, that's like $25,000 flag. They're expensive.
Yeah, really cool. I agree.
All right, any other comments or feedback?
Anything with sound? I know they're interactive cases, but is there a lot of thought to the sound system for this space?
As in like an ambient sound or like
Just sound in
specific-
general, like acousticals, or just, in terms of being able to have interactive, displays come to life better. And also, I'm not sure if the actual table has sound, but is there any speakers or house?
I know for the people's history, the spoken history's interactive, big screen and the people passing through will have sound. I know we approached sound at the map for some things, but that's still being developed, so we're still working that out and making sure that they're not gonna clash with each other too, so that the visitors can still get their, full understanding without the noise pollution, that's going on.
For cost, could you make an app that you're able, because the sound is interesting, you're able to download the app and then it has all the interactive stuff.
Yeah. Someone made that suggestion last night too, that's exciting to hear it twice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just gonna say, you're gonna have a hardwood floor, you've got hard walls, that ceiling has to be sound.
Yep.
You get 50 people in there, you're not gonna hear anything.
I can't wait for the Marty Keller hologram. I said we should make a hologram of Marty Keller.
Well, if that is it, guys, I think we're good to wrap up. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
any further suggestions, you're welcome to email me. They also have their cards up front. And then we will be sending out a survey. Did I just jump on your head?
Nope.
Okay. We will be sending out a survey tomorrow at midday. And if you think of anything, it will be open until May 17th. March 17th. March 17th. I am skipping ahead, planning
And
May.
if I may add, we heard everything you said. We have it written down in triplicate, but there's nothing wrong with writing it down again.
That's true.
That way we have a paper trail that's more than just notes.
Thank you, everybody.